when I entered BVS, but I think I intended to somehow maybe share a little of myself, to give a little bit that I had learned or that I had been taught.
I was ready for a change. I needed a change, something to challenge me and to give me a direction, give me some place to go and to point my mind towards. I think BVS contributes to many people, but they have to come with some tools and skills and abilities also. The ability to contribute is probably one of the main ingredients that has to be there. And then growth over and above what they contribute in the beginning is their own process of development.
We try to do things that help a person understand more clearly where they're at in their own growth, in understanding the kinds of things that are important to them, which includes areas of religious belief, the nature of their relationships to people and to God, and to all the kinds of things that lie at the basis of their life. Well, I'm glad you all made it. As you know, there'll be a few people coming in tomorrow who got caught in the snow in the east. Together, we expect about 24 people, which will make up the 96th training unit of BVS. In case you haven't all met us yet, I'm Ron Hanft, training director. Anna Mae Rensberger is assistant training director on the staff. And David Layton in the corner is a BVSer who's a volunteer staff assistant. And the three of us will be with you for the 4 weeks.
I think this is what service is. It is a way of life. It's an attitude that one has of trying to fit in and contribute as much as possible.
On the schedule that we'll be leaving here pretty shortly. None of the training will be done right here. We'll be going out to Retreat Center this evening. We'll be there until Thursday and moving on then into the city for a couple days. And then next week you'll be out on individual project assignments. There are just some situations that are more conducive to certain kinds of learning than others. And when you're trying to learn a lot of different things, then different locations and different settings for that have an awful lot to do with how much a person really is sensitized to the kinds of things that we're trying to get at. I suppose the simplest way to describe the purpose of training is to say that we're trying to help volunteers get from where they've been to where they're going. First of all, in the area of personal development, there are sort of 4 kinds of things we try to get at. One is to help the individual in the development of his own motivations and values and beliefs. Another area is in understanding the dynamics of human relationships as they affect the living and working situations that people will find themselves in and find themselves in directly in the training process. Another area is understanding both the social issues involved as well as the personal experience of working in another subculture or in another country, experiencing a way of life and people whose backgrounds are different from one's own and from one's own past. Another area is understanding the issues and the methods of nonviolence, both as a personal experience on project situations and also as a method of social change.
The dependency really tries to help a volunteer understand a little bit about limitations of being dependent. And it's a short exercise to help the volunteer get at what kinds of things are helpful, to be conscious of the person who you're trying to help, to allow them to do all that is really possible for them to do for themselves.
Well, the dependency meal, I think, has some possibilities for real learning in that gives a person a chance to do something. The goal of it being to explore, the helping relationship and the elements of dependency that are involved there. To discover a little bit more about what they do with situations like that, and to get some feedback from their partner about how that person is affected by what they do.
The box's exercise is basically just an exercise to get people to think about what it's like to live with somebody. We give them about a half hour to talk about things like what kind of setup are you going to have as far as sharing food, or each person buying their own meals, and then this part of the cupboard's mine and this part of the refrigerator's mine. The things that cause people, I think, most often to leave project and to be dissatisfied. After about 20 minutes, we say, now be quiet. And during the silent period, people find that the box gets a lot smaller then. And they experience eye contact, touch contact, things like that are a lot more intense than verbal things.
We've been talking about what project is like in the training experience and trying to practice some of those things. Working through all of these kinds of things, I think, are real stretching and growing experiences. And that's really what project life is dealing with. Often, the task that you are sent to do, the teaching of the small children or the doing of a certain task is the easy part. The rest of it, the relating, the understanding, the trying to work out workable solutions to problem areas, just establishing yourself as a personality, that's where the real struggles come. And you can't help but grow during experiences like that.
When you first come onto a project, you give of yourself totally, every spare moment. And you suddenly realize that can't go on for 2 years. And so you try to find a medium where you give of yourself, but then you have to retain some of it as your personal, property.
It's really frustrating not to be able to be a little bit selfish. You get tired of sacrificing everything to the group. You want very much just to be able sometimes to say, okay, everybody leave, we want time to ourselves. And it's not possible. And it's hard to remember, they probably feel the same way. One of the most exciting things about being stretched to your limits is to find out what your limits are. Most people think BVSers can do anything. They think we are of unlimited talent. And so you try your darndest to live up to their expectations for a while until you find out that you can only stretch so far. And then you find your best areas and give more time to those areas.
The main thing that the older people are looking for, I think, is someone who cares, someone that's actually there to help them. You can see there's a special little thing about them that you would really want to help them, but they reject all help, totally. And it's really a challenge to try to withstand the rejection, and it's really heartwarming when you finally win their confidence. And it's kind of a challenge trying to determine how to bolster a person's ego, help them regain their confidence again. I think just dealing with people is so satisfying, yet so, can be so satisfying, yet can at times be so negative and really tear you apart. I think, the diversity of being torn apart one minute and then finding such satisfaction in a person develops your personality.
The in-service training experience that we had in November was a fantastic experience for me. The in-service training experience takes place in a geographical area of BVSers, a central point. We came together, we went to camp in Ohio, and experienced there a fellowship that I hadn't experienced for a long time. Spent quite a bit of time on Bible study, studying two particular sections of the scripture, one on riches and how many riches a Christian can feel comfortable with. Spent about 2 hours on that passage, and then the next morning we spent some time on Romans 13 on man's relationship with the government, and especially the Christian's relationship to his government. The whole 3 days was one of living together, kind of like the golden rule. This helped me understand what service was, and the fact that it's basically a sharing experience. It doesn't mean helping anybody, it doesn't mean doing something for somebody. It's just a very simple fact of sharing. And this relates also to my project of the Peter Pig Co-op. As our name of our project implies, we're HEAD, which is Human and Economic Appalachian Development. And I think this human development is just as important, or maybe more important, as the economic development. People working together and doing something not just so much for the benefit of yourself, but for the neighbor or the other member of the co-op. And at all times keeping that person in mind, or more simply put it, the golden rule. Sharing of just working with one another in betterment of themselves, doing community type projects. And I think this is where the human development comes in.
When a BVSer considers the commitment which Christianity calls for, he usually finds that his total lifestyle is altered. Over the years, BVS has been able to help many volunteers move outside a rather narrow, restrictive life pattern and move beyond the walls to a more open, free kind of life. Consider the stretching which happens when a young couple from Ohio moves into the inner city and experiences the crowding conditions of that city. These kind of influences and changes will affect one for his entire life.
We're both from farms, and here we're surrounded by 3-story row houses and factories, and the only time we see anything green, it's a weed popping up through a chink in the sidewalk.
The biggest cultural shock for me was the language difference. It's comparable to going to a foreign country. And
one of the other big changes was the lack of privacy, because we both tended to be quiet and loners, and then all of a sudden, here we are in the middle of 4 million people.
the greatest cultural shock, as opposed to just a change in value, was coming from an environment where your property is your respect, your possessions are your respect, to an environment where property has no respect.
After Jesus was baptized, then they took him to, then he went out into the wilderness, he went out to the desert.
Not only do we live in the community, but they all know we make 50 cents a day, and we didn't dress any better. You know, we began to speak the same language that they did, use the same words, express ourselves in the same way, kid with them the same way that they kid. And just gradually we began being accepted as one of them.
Okay. Now, let me read this first part to you.
And living so close to people, I think it's made us both super sensitive to the feelings of the people around you and the needs of the people. They don't bounce off your skin. Like, you learn to absorb the feelings, and they really get to you, so that you really can't ignore them like so many people do. And if you're any type of person at all, you feel an obligation to do something, to serve.
I think that's one thing that will most definitely carry over. It's the same problems and the same things that are going to need to be done in other communities, no matter where we go.
Every member of the church is called upon to benefit and help his fellow men wherever he finds himself. There is a sense in which every member of the Church of the Brethren should consider himself or herself to be a part of Brethren volunteer service. Of course, it is legitimate for persons to give spatial service for 1 or 2 years of their lives. However, we want to get over the idea that BVS is a one-shot experience whereby a person enters a program for a year or two and then returns to business as usual. Many volunteers are disturbed when they are referred to as ex-BVSers because they think of themselves as still very much involved with BVS throughout their entire lifetime. One of the dimensions of BVS which needs to be expanded is to provide more opportunities for adult volunteers over age 30 to be of service. Many projects welcome mature, older adults who have the flexibility to adapt to a variety of project situations. Over the years, the great majority of BVSers have been young people between the ages of 18 and 30, but we are anxious to challenge our older volunteers as well.
We're geared right now to handle a minimum of 4.5 million pounds of clothing a year. Our daily output must be in the vicinity of 20,000 pounds a day in order to get the job done for the year. And this is not only Church World Service, also Lutheran World Relief, National Association of Evangelicals, Christian Reform, ask us to do their job as well as part of the total ecumenical picture. To me, the volunteers is as vital a link in the total scope of the program as the mainspring in our watch, because without that function going on, the total program wouldn't work. I think that some of the volunteers here get as much personal satisfaction out of their aspect of the total program and can see almost the recipient receiving a gift as if they were doing it themselves when they stop to evaluate this. We're encouraging volunteers to go into truck driving here for us that have the ability and the desire, because transportation is the backbone of our program, and we need to depend on our transportation for the ongoing program and the facilitating the churches throughout.
It was the Russian philosopher Leo Tolstoy who said that if you want to feel needed by other people, you must do for persons those things which they either cannot or will not do for themselves. I think there's a very real sense in which many BVSers do their greatest service by performing for other people tasks which those people cannot or will not do for themselves. We have to remember that in a hospital setting, for instance, the work of a highly trained doctor or nurse is worthless unless there are persons who are cleaning the floors and making the beds. In other words, the work of the technician is often of no value unless there's somebody available to perform the menial task as well.
We've had some very outstanding individuals who would exceed the abilities of many professional persons because of the kind of personal commitment and the motivation that the volunteer somehow has acquired and focuses in on the giving and in the sharing of his own life. It's my own opinion that a BVSer has certain characteristics and qualities that exceeds the average individual because of his eagerness to want to serve his fellow men in this very human way.